I started reading Percy Jackson when I was really young. I had just moved schools. I was trying to make new friends. I was trying new hobbies, new stuff. So I went to the bookstore one day and I saw The Lightning Thief on the shelf. And I was like, okay, let's give it a try. It looks good. And then I basically didn't stop for many years after that. Percy Jackson became kind of an obsession for me. Like, I read the first book, then I read Sea of Monsters, and it was test season in my school, and my mom was like, okay, we're gonna buy the last three books for you if you study a lot, take good grades on this test. And I was like, I'm gonna try really hard. I did succeed, and they bought the last three books, and I read in like 3 days. And I was just obsessed with it. I was reading everything that Rick Riordan was putting out, which includes, obviously, Heroes of Olympus. By that time, he hadn't released all of Heroes of Olympus. He had released The Lost Hero and I read it in Portuguese, but The Son of Neptune was just released. I had to read it in English, and I have a really special place in my heart for the second book because it was the first book that I read like from back to back in English. That was how much I loved that story and how much I wanted to know what had happened to Percy. And so I read the book, and then I waited and waited, read The Mark of Athena, was just in shock by the end. And then I just never read the other two books, like the last two books. And then years went by, I read other things, but Percy Jackson always had a special place in my heart. Last year, or 2023, I'm not really sure, me and my friends decided to start a book club. And the first book that we read was The Lightning Thief. And then we just kind of got into Rick Riordan's pyramid scheme, and recently we finished Heroes of Olympus. So I finally finished Heroes of Olympus over 10 years later from when I first started my journey into the Riordan verse, and I have a lot of opinions, I have a lot of thoughts. So this is going to be like a comprehensive video with spoilers about what I think he did good, what I think could be improved, what I think was bad, and kind of what I'm expecting from Trials of Apollo, because we're gonna read that, just not right now. We're gonna read some other stuff and then go back to the Riordan verse. I think the best way to talk about Heroes of Olympus is dividing it by characters, because I'm gonna be totally honest with you, one of the weakest things for me in Heroes of Olympus is the plot, like the general plot, everything that's going on, this prophecy of the seven. Like, I don't think he did it as good as he did it on Percy Jackson and the Olympians. However, he is still really good at building good characters and good character relationships. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna talk about the main characters and what I think about each of them, and a little bit about their stories. We're gonna start off strong with one of the characters that I have the most opinions about, and it's Jason Grace. Jason was a character that I believe was built to be a new Percy and at the same time a counterpart of Percy, but I don't think he succeeded in either of those things. And I don't think it's the character's fault. I think it was a lot because of the lack of preparation from the writer to develop a whole story for him. On The Lost Hero, we have this main character that at the beginning he's really interesting. Like, he's the son of Jupiter, he's from another camp that by that time we don't know anything about, and he has lost his memories, he has fake memories, and he's linked to this prophecy that we saw at the end of the last series. And so we're kind of like, okay, he is the new main character that we're going to see throughout the book and find out things about him. I think that the fact that he lost his memory is both a really good thing, like we are trying to figure out this character just as much as he's trying to figure out his old life, and there's this mystique, this mysterious aura about him, and at the same time it's one of his biggest weaknesses, because I think Rick Riordan spent so much time focusing on other things and relying on the fact that Jason didn't have personality because he didn't remember who he was, he basically had no characteristics. It got to a point like he didn't have any characteristics, he didn't have a personality, but it wasn't acceptable anymore because he had already recovered his memory. He was developing relationships with the other characters from the series. I think Jason is such a lost opportunity to develop an interesting character. I know a lot of people from like a newer generation of fans really like Jason, and I think it's mostly because of what happens to him in Trials of Apollo, which I'm not going to talk about because spoilers, and I don't really know exactly how it happens, and also because of what happens between him and Nico in House of Hades. I think that Jason is just wasted potential, but it's really hard to have a character that it's wasted potential when he's basically your new main character in a 5-book series. Piper, on the other hand, I think she was unjustly criticized by the fandom while the books were being released, and I'm including myself in that because I was just like, Piper feels like she's not like the other girls. She thinks she's so much better and she has no personality other than being Jason's girlfriend. And when I reread The Lost Hero, I saw that's just not true. Like, she has the most interesting story out of the 3 from the first book. And even though, like, on the rest of the books, I really don't think that Rick Riordan had another story to develop for her. And her story was already kind of closed off, like it was over. So yeah, she became like Jason's girlfriend. She had other personality traits, but mainly she was just like there. But in the first book, she's amazing. Like, she is such an interesting character. She has these fake memories with her boyfriend, and so she's trying to work that out. She also has like her own secret going into their mission, and she's hiding from her 2 best friends. She has this internal struggle of like trying to help her family and help herself, while at the same time she feels bad for doing that behind everyone's back. And so she has like this really interesting internal fight with herself. I really like that she has that quote-unquote kleptomania phase where she's just basically using charm speak without even realizing it. I really like her relationship with her dad. It's a really complicated relationship throughout most of the book. On The Lost Hero, I'm going to defend her with everything that I have. On the other books, like I said, this doesn't apply just to Piper. I think for all characters, when Rick finishes developing a story for the character on a specific book, he basically doesn't have anything to do with that character anymore. So he's gonna do little things to develop them, but I don't think it's very effective. And I can see that in Piper because she was so good on the first book. She was doing everything on the first book. She was everything to me, and then throughout the rest of the series she's just kind of there. I'm gonna say that one point that I like about her development, it's on the last book, The Blood of Olympus. She has an interesting and very good to see like relationship with Annabeth. They become really good friends. They really complement each other. Piper is all about emotions and Annabeth is all about rational thought. So I think they really complement each other, and I wish I would have seen more of that. Now let's talk about Leo. He is one of the most beloved characters from this whole series, and I remember really liking Leo when I was younger. I was a lot on Tumblr by that time, which basically just like definitely did some mental damage to me for the rest of my life. But Leo was just everywhere on Percy Jackson Tumblr, and everyone was using Harry Styles gifs of him. For some reason I was doing that too, even though Leo is Latino. I think it was basically because of Harry Styles' hair by that time. Leo had, and kind of still has, I think, kind of a chokehold on everyone on the fandom. But as I was rereading the books, I kind of started liking him less until it got to a point that I really didn't like him in the last book. Leo has this really interesting story on the first book. like he is an orphan. He is this troubled kid that has a lot of anger but doesn't really talk about it, and he tries to deal with everything with humor. So in The Lost Hero, I think it was really interesting to see his tragic backstory and everything that happened to his mom. And for me, the thing that really, where it all went wrong was when Rick Riordan realized that he was very much like Percy in some aspects. Like, he is a humorous character. He always deals with everything with good laughs and making jokes, and that's pretty much Percy. But I think Percy is a way more interesting character, starting from the fact that we already had like 5 books of development for Percy. He just became so fixated with Leo. In my opinion, like, he was making chapters for Leo even though it got to a point that he didn't have anything to tell anymore, especially on the last book. Like, he had like 2 things going on the last book. He wanted to see Calypso again, and he was trying to deal with the fact that he was probably gonna die on the prophecy, because of the prophecy. This second part could have been really good. For me, it just wasn't. Like, anything that has to do with the prophecy doesn't really work in my opinion. It's not really well executed, and we don't see a lot of emotional reaction from Leo about the fact that he's probably gonna die, you know? And I wish I would have seen more of that. Like, he was so focused on following the plan to try to trick death and trick the prophecy that we don't really see an emotional layer to that. I think Leo was interesting at the beginning. His chapters weren't as interesting as Piper's, for example, in the first book, but I still think that he was the second best character. And then on the rest of the books, I was kind of like, okay. And then for me, it just went downhill. The more I read from Leo, the less I liked him. I am absolutely 100% sure that he was Rick's favorite character to write about. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at times it got really annoying. So let's talk about my queen, Hazel Leves. I love this girl so much. She has been my favorite character from Heroes of Olympus since I read Son of Neptune for the first time. I really like her. I think she also suffers from the thing that all of these characters suffer, which is basically they had an amazing first book, they had an amazing backstory on the beginning, and then Rick Riordan just didn't have anything to tell about them anymore. And I think she was such wasted potential at the end, for the fact that her and Frank are not even in the fight. Like, basically the last big fight against Gaia, it's only Leo, Piper, and Jason. And I think that was just poor decision. I really don't like it. And I think Hazel, Frank, Percy, and Annabeth could have done more. But I think I got more upset about Frank and Hazel just because they're new characters. Like, we already saw Percy and Annabeth doing a lot. Hazel is such a sweet girl with such a tragic backstory. And I think that her relationship with Leo and the confusion that she has with the fact that he is basically her ex-boyfriend, Sammy, could have been better developed. But I really liked seeing the scenes where they go back to the past and see how she lived her life and how was her relationship with Sammy. I also like the fact that she goes from just being literally cursed. She died, then she went back, and she felt really lonely and like an outsider. And at the end of the series, she has a lot of friends. She has a place to call home in Camp Jupiter. She has an amazing boyfriend, and I am just so proud of her, and I just love her so much. I just wish she had more stories to tell other than, like, mostly in Son of Neptune and a little bit in Mark of Athena. Frank is another amazing character. I think he is my second favorite character from the new characters that we see in the series, and he is just this sweet guy, this sweet son of Mars, which is basically the opposite from Clarice. She's the daughter of Ares that we see from the first series, so we have this idea that they're all very aggressive and everything, but Frank is just so sweet. I like seeing throughout the series how he develops on this like more military side of him, but he doesn't really lose this humanity and this soft side that he has, which is basically Frank's whole thing. Like, he is really sweet, but also he is basically an allegory, a metaphor for immigrants, because he didn't feel like he belonged, because he was a lot of things at the same time. He's part Chinese, he's part Canadian, he's part Roman, he's this big mixture of different cultures and different places. I love him. He's amazing. I have to say that, of course, he was better developed in Son of Neptune than on the other books. I think that we got to see a lot of personal development in Son of Neptune, but then on the rest of the books we kind of got to see a development of his powers. But yeah, I really like him. I really like his relationship with Hazel. I really like how he trusts her with everything that he got. Literally, like, he literally gave his life on her hands. Best couple. I love them so much. Now we're gonna talk about Percy and Annabeth. I'm not gonna talk about them so much just because they're the main characters from the first series and we already got to see a lot of them, but I felt very much Percy's absence, not in the sense of like, oh, I was missing seeing the character narrating the story, but more in the sense of like, I was there with Annabeth and I really wanted to know what was going on with Percy, if he was okay. When we saw him in Son of Neptune, I really wanted to see if he was gonna recover his memories, how long it was gonna take. I was really afraid that something was going to happen between him and Annabeth, but I think Rick Riordan was like, okay, I really need to give these characters some peace, so at least their relationship is going to be fine. And they're such an amazing couple. They're such amazing characters. I really like to see when like Annabeth is giving everything that she has to look for Percy, and then Percy is holding on so much to her memory as a lifeline. And then when they meet again, they're kind of like, I'm never gonna let you go again. I'm gonna be with you and I'm going to Tartarus with you. Oh my god, the end of Mark of Athena, like, as I reread the book, I saw that I had a fake memory from it, from the fact that I don't think it's a really good book, but the ending is such an impact, and I was so afraid of what was going to happen to them, but at the same time I was like, yes, he loves her so much that he jumped on Tartarus with her, and he's going to live through hell with his girlfriend. But then, like, their journey on Tartarus, I think it has some ups and downs. I think it was really interesting on the beginning, and then they meet Bob, and it's basically kind of a free pass throughout the whole thing. I know they wouldn't survive without help, but at the same time it felt like such an easy way out. At the same time, we have that part with Percy where he's like manipulating, I think it's poison, something like that, where Annabeth is really afraid of what he's doing. So like I said, I think there are some ups and downs from their journey on Tartarus, but overall, like, we already knew they're great characters. We already knew that they're a great couple, so not really anything new, but I love to see them whenever I can. And then I'm going to talk about like the last two characters that we have POVs from. We have Nico and Reina. So let's start with Reina. Reina was a character that, I don't know right now, but at the time that the books were being released, she was so villainized by the fandom. Everyone was kind of like, yeah, she is going to steal Jason from Piper and she's the worst character, or at least that's what I saw where I was on Tumblr. First of all, she was into Jason, but Jason was never really into her. Like, there was never a triangle from the beginning because he didn't like her. He liked Piper. She was never a threat to the relationship. And I think people also kind of didn't like her because she kind of has a crush on Percy on the second book. But it's, again, not a threat to the relationship, so I don't know what the big fuss was about. And then on the last book, she has a POV, and it's one of the best things from the last book. I wish we would have seen more of her throughout the series because she's a really interesting character. Again, she has a really tragic background with literal ghosts from her past following her whole life. And she has a troubled relationship with her sister, which I find really interesting to see. And she is just a loyal friend. She's a good leader. I wish Rick Riordan would have had the courage to kill her because he puts her in a situation that she literally needed a miracle to survive. And I think that narratively it would have been really interesting if she had died at that point. Even though I really like the character, but he really didn't kill anyone on this series. It doesn't make a lot of sense because there were important characters that died in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and Heroes of Olympus is theoretically a more mature series for an older demographic. So I don't really know what happened. But anyway, I really, really like Reyna. Nico, he has been such an amazing character from the last series until this point. Like, I really like him. He goes through such a journey of being this really hopeful and whimsical kid to losing everything, feeling really lost and lonely and isolated, going through hell, literally. I think it's so nice to see throughout this series this whole journey of him finding a family, like finding a family in Hazel, making friends with people from the Argo 2, and also with Reyna, starting to trust people. And also, of course, we have to talk about the fact that in House of Hades we have the Cupid scene. I see people making fun arts until this day. I see people talking about it constantly, all the time. People are talking about that scene. I have like mixed feelings reading it as a 26-year-old in 2025. I don't think it was the best representation that we could have had, not for Nico, but for the situation that he was in, and also other characters' reactions, because on House of Hades, we see Jason constantly saying, like, you can't keep hiding this from people. You have to tell everyone. Everyone will accept you and everything. And I know he was doing that with the best intentions, but he had to understand that Nico is not even from our time. Of course, this is gonna be really hard for him. It's hard for anyone, like queer people, to come out. People who are from 2025. From this century. Imagine being someone from like the 1940s, I don't even remember when Nico is from, and having to deal with that guilt and with that shame of being who you really are, and for liking your friend who has a girlfriend. Of course he's gonna be troubled by that, and of course he won't want to tell anyone about it. So I really wish Rick would have given the character more time to just like deal with that in his own mind without having Jason saying all the time, like, you have to tell everyone, you have to tell people. But at the same time, I kind of understand that it was like 2013 activism, and Rick Riordan is a straight white cis man. I just think that it could have been better executed. And I really, really liked seeing him and the Will in the last few chapters. Like, I have such a good feeling about their books. I think they're going to be amazing. There is only one book that was released, but I think the second book has already been announced. So I'm really excited for that, but I still have to read the Trials of Apollo before I can read Sun and the Star, something like that. I thought that they were gonna have like this grumpy sunshine dynamic, but it's not really like that. Like, Nico, of course, is grumpy, and Will is a ray of sunshine, but Will is there to say, like, you gotta stop being so dramatic and let people in. There are other people here who want to get closer to you, want to support you, who want to help you, and you can't just really stay there and act like you're the most lonely person on earth, because at some point you were, but you're not anymore. And I like how he's like quick-witted. He responds to everything that Nico has to say. So I really like their dynamic. I think it was a great way to finish the series, like regarding Nico, because we get excited for what's to come. Reading it right now, knowing that he was going to release Nico and Will's book, you can really see the preparation. And I think he prepared that and Trials of Apollo a little bit better than he did with Heroes of Olympus. Okay, so now that we finished talking about the characters, I'm just gonna briefly mention that I think even though like the ending of this series really wasn't good, the big two battles at the end weren't that good. I think that he stayed so long in the format of having like 4 chapters for each character that he could have done differently in some specific points. Seeing the last few battles only from Jason's perspective was underwhelming. It was really quick, it was really rushed. So I think those weren't the best decisions. But at the same time, I think that he made a better preparation for the next books than he did when he finished Percy Jackson. Because when he finished Percy Jackson and the Olympians, we only had like the prophecy, and he basically could do anything that he wanted with that. It was too open. It didn't really feel like he prepared, he knew what he was going to do. This time we had like some chapters with Apollo getting to know the fact that the oracle is not really working, the prophecies are not coming anymore. We have Tyson, Ella, and Rachel going, I don't remember where, but they're going somewhere to look for books to get more prophecies because the oracle is not working. We see Apollo getting reprimanded by Zeus, so we know something is going to happen to him, and we already see him in the 17-year-old form that he's gonna have, I think, in Trials of Apollo. And we have, of course, Will and Nico's relationship. So we get the preparation for 2 series. I'm really happy to see that. At least, like, I don't know if Trials of Apollo is going to be any good, but at the same time, I am glad that he at least got to do a little bit more preparation. So yeah, I've been talking for like 45 minutes at this point. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. If you already read Heroes of Olympus, let's have a conversation down below. Please don't attack me on the comments if I said something about your favorite character that you didn't really like, because we're all allowed to have different opinions. Or maybe if I said something that I may change my mind when I read the next book series. I don't mind, but let's chat down below, and I'll see you next video. Bye!